Everybody, this is Dream, and this is going to be the main lineup for Daily Fantasy Baseball for 8/27. We have a decent chunk of games today. Overall, I felt like that pitching is a little bit weak today when it comes to options, just because there's not a ton of strikeouts. But we do have 5 teams that I think are stackable. Uh, one of those teams being a little bit unusual, but let me go ahead and talk about those guys. So the New York Yankees, they're facing Adam Oller. He is literally one of the worst pitchers on the board today, and the right-handed bats for them are really going to have an advantage. I kind of feel like Aaron Judge is going to have a home run in this game again. Another option is San Diego against Daniel Lynch. He's just been pretty awful as of late. And then Houston against Dean Kramer. The right-handed hitters are just going to explode on him. And then the New York Mets against Colorado. Kyle Freeland has been really bad this year, even on the road, so I don't really feel like that he's safe at all. And the Mets have a plus matchup all the way around. And then my little unusual option is actually Detroit. Now, there's only a couple bats that you're probably even going to want to use from this team, but you could plug those guys in as a mini stack of the sort, and so I just wanted to include them in that aspect. Riley Green is basically the top guy for them today, but you could always mix in the catcher or a couple other players. So, at any rate, those are the stacks that I have, and then I've picked out about 5 pitchers that I kind of like. I don't love any of the pitchers today. It's just not a great pitching day, but overall, it's not the worst pitching day I've seen, but it's definitely down below. And it's kind of crappy that Ohtani pitches today, but it's in the early slate and not in the main, so we don't get that advantage with Ohtani. But we do have some good pitchers. I will say that we are pretty overpriced today in pitching. Not a whole lot of strikeout rates and stuff like that available, so you're going to have to be kind of choosy with the pitchers. So my top pick is Yu Darvish. He has been remarkably consistent. He's not somebody that really gets a crap ton of strikeouts, and he doesn't have the best defense sometimes, but he has been scoring points pretty consistently for a while. I expect him to get in the 20-25 range, which isn't ideal when you're paying $10,400, but you want him to get a little bit higher. You'd like. There's just not that much availability for super high scoring at the pitching today. But he has been, pitching the ball pretty well. Like I said, he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts, but he's still up on the higher end of the strikeouts just because of the matchups. He hasn't played against Kansas City this year, so we don't really have a good idea about that. But he's a pretty solid pitcher, so he's relatively safe. But he's definitely capped himself based on the strikeouts and stuff like that. The second pitcher that I like pretty good is Charlie Morton. Mostly just because he's been pitching the ball really well as of late, and he's kind of the type of pitcher who kind of goes through ups and downs. And so when he's in his ups, then you really like him, but when he's in his downs, you don't like him so much. But right now, Atlanta Braves are rolling hard, and he's been doing really well for them as well. And so I do like him in this matchup against St. Louis. I don't think Nolan Arenado is going to be playing again, and that's a definite advantage. So you really only have to deal with a couple really good batters on St. Louis. And he has some strikeout potential. He's been actually throwing really well in the strikeout aspect. He's got 11 and 12 strikeouts and 7 in the last 3 games and 8 in the last 4 games. And that's going to, if he does give up like a home run to like a solo to Paul Goldschmidt or something, those strikeouts are going to help him. And, just seeing what St. Louis has been like the last, couple weeks, I feel like that he has some strikeout potential in this game, especially on a slate where the strikeout potential is a little bit hit and miss. So he's my second favorite pick. And then I have 3 more guys who I consider to be more of secondary options, but they definitely have some upside. Obviously not ideal all the way around, but they have some upside. Merrill Kelly for Arizona against the Chicago White Sox. Now, I do like some of the Chicago White Sox players, so this is going to be a little bit hard to want to use, especially at his price point, and the fact he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts. But he's been pitching the ball really well. You can see 21 points per game the last 10, and he's got one of the better matchups, and he's one of the better pitchers pitching, and so we're just kind of going with that. And Chicago can kind of they have good players. It's just they're not always hitting the ball very well. So he's an option. And then Jose Urquidy for the Houston Astros. He's going up against Baltimore, who obviously has been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, and they have some good hitters. But he does have some upside where some of the other guys don't. And some part of his upside is the fact that he does get wins in a lot of his games, because he plays for the Astros, so that helps. So that can mask some of his down games a little bit. But overall, he's not ideal necessarily, and he's not going to get you a ton of strikeouts. But he definitely has some upside just for the fact that when he pitches, a lot of times Houston wins. And then my final pick, he was a little bit less expensive, not ideal either, just because he doesn't get a ton of strikeouts again. But I see a trend with these guys, is Sonny Gray from Minnesota against San Francisco. If they were playing at San Francisco, I would like this a little bit more. But again, beggars can't be choosers on the slate. He's been pitching pretty well, and he has some, big upside. But he's he's an above average pitcher with decent stuff, and he's a cheaper option that you could go to. He's just not ideal, but he's in that range. And then the two pitchers that you're probably like, well, why haven't you mentioned these guys? Luis Castillo and Brandon Woodruff. Castillo has been good this season, but in the last game, excuse me, against Oakland, he really just stunk it up. And while he is pretty consistent, and he hasn't been striking out guys as much as I feel like he normally does. And Cleveland is kind of a weird team where they're kind of scrappy, and so I don't really love throwing guys against Cleveland, and that's why I've left him out. And then the other guy, Brandon Woodruff, the Cubs have just beat him up when he's played them, and so that just leaves him very unattractive. Again, he can get strikeouts, but not at a huge rate, and like I said, it's not a big strikeout day, and so I'm just looking for guys that can score points and, be pretty consistent and stuff. And so, obviously of those two guys, Castillo is better than Woodruff. But for the price points of everybody, I've steered away from those guys simply due to matchup situations. That's pretty much what I have for pitcher. Obviously, there's a lot of bad pitchers on the board today as well. I feel like it's going to be a pretty high-scoring day based on what I've looked at. And so we do need to find some bats. And for catcher, ironically, there's not a ton of great options simply because some of the good catchers are going up against the pitchers that are, actually have some stuff that's pretty good. And so I've kind of narrowed it down to 4 pitchers that I like pretty good. Obviously, 2 of them are top-tier pitchers and then a secondary pitcher and a Hail Mary. And so my top tier pitcher is actually Adley Rutschman for Baltimore. He's been hitting the ball really well as of late. He's 9.1 for the past 10 games. And as you can see, he just gets hits and then occasionally hits home runs. And, that's what we would like from our pitcher. And, he has a kind of a plus matchup just because of his bat and the fact that Houston's pitcher, while I do like him okay, he does have tendency to do bad against righties, and he can switch hit, so we have that advantage with Rutschman. And then my other top tier pick is William Contreras for the Atlanta Braves. He has just been mashing the ball, 349 over the last 10, 9.9. per game. I can't, and I just really like him today. He's just been hitting the ball. He had 24 points yesterday, 23 game before. He's just been really good and consistent too. So, and he has home run potential every game. So that's what we like at catcher. And then my secondary option is Travis d'Arnaud, also from the Braves. The thing about this guy is that he's been hitting the ball really well as well. It's like, my goodness, the Braves, they have so many good catchers. But, yeah, he's batting 344 over the last 10 with a 9.4, which is above his averages by a lot. And he's really good against St. Louis at 8.5 in 4 games average. He hadn't hit a home run, but, he's kind of due for that. But he's been, really hitting the ball well. And so, what we look for at catcher are guys that can hit home runs and get on base and stuff like that. And there's not a ton of guys today that really fit that mold, but he is one of them. So if he plays, he's definitely somebody that you want to consider. There's not a lot of value at this position besides him, but there is one other guy, and we've mentioned him before in a couple other videos. And why don't I have this set? Okay, sorry about that. And that is Shea Langurley's. Alright, so he's actually starting to improve his batting average a little bit, but he's still getting strikeouts. And, obviously that's a problem. He's a boom or bust kind of guy. If he hits you a triple or a home run, then you're going to score a lot of points with him. But if he doesn't, then you're going to see a lot of strikeouts in that strikeout column, which obviously isn't ideal. But if you just need to throw a flyer at catcher because you need to save money, like, you could do a lot worse than him at that position. And he actually has a decent matchup. He is going against one of the Yankees' less quality pitcher in Domingo German, and I definitely like a couple. I would like players against him, except for the fact it's just Oakland, so there's just only a couple guys that you would even like if you could use them. So I also don't think that Sean Murphy is going to play in this game, which would definitely be a guy that I would like. So you could add him to the list if you wanted to. But overall, those 4 are really the top guys I like. Like I said, Shea is he's a Hail Mary option. But again, he's like home run or bust, and he's in a plus matchup. So that's what we like to find for those Hail Mary type spots. At first base, I have 2 top tier options, and then I have 3 top alternates, and then I have 2 secondary options. So my top tier options are Nate Lowe, who, my goodness, this guy has been absolutely killing the ball lately. He's got 5 home runs in the last 10 games, batting 400 and averaging 14 fantasy points a game. What is not to like about that? That is absolutely amazing that he's still only $3,800. He's averaging 7.7 for the season. It's not like he's been slouching all season or something. But my goodness. This guy is one of my favorite plays on the board for Texas. Obviously they've got they're going against a kind of roughed up pitcher and Eduardo Rodriguez. That game, I feel like it's going to have a lot of points scored, Texas and Detroit, just because there's 2 pitchers that are absolutely not that good. And he's my favorite player on Texas to play today overall. Some of the benefit at first base is that several of the players have some alternate ability for other batting places. So he's definitely somebody that you want to take a look at to be your first baseman today. The other guy is Christian Walker for Arizona. He has, home run potential. He's hit 3 in the last 10 games. And his batting average is coming up because he's hitting 324. And when this guy gets going, he's usually really fun to roster because he'll hit home runs and stuff like that. And so he's definitely worth the look. He is a little bit more expensive, obviously, but he's a pretty solid option today. Then I have 3 guys that are kind of the top alternates at this position. Luke Voit is the first one for the Washington Nationals. Obviously, I don't typically love Luke Voit, but really, he just came back from injury, and he has home run potential, and he's in a plus matchup, so, we like that okay. However, if he may or may not start, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Joey Menendez has been hitting well, and he could be a guy that would limit his ability to starting of chances. The next guy that I really like, and I almost put this guy as a top tier option as well, is Rowdy Tellez. The only reason I didn't is because his batting average is terrible. But here's the thing about Rowdy Tellez. He hits home runs occasionally. He's got 27 on the season. And when he's popped up in my algorithm to utilize, I've never really been that disappointed. And he does like to mash on Chicago. As you can see, he's got 10 fantasy points per game in 16 games against the Chicago Cubs. And he has 6 home runs in those 16 games. That's just silly that he does that. And he's at home, which he does better. And so I really like him today. There's a lot to like at first base. If he hit the ball at a higher rate and a little bit more consistency, I would definitely have him as a top option. But he is a top alternate, and anytime he pops up in my algorithm, I am pretty interested in utilizing him. And like I said, he's been really good, and he scored 18 points yesterday, in fact. And so we look for him as another option today. And then my final option at the top alternate is Andrew Vaughn for the Chicago White Sox. Where'd you go? Yeah, there we go. Obviously, he hasn't been hitting the ball quite as well as we'd like, but overall, he still has potential. And when the White Sox are doing well, he is one of the reasons. And so we do like him today. He's just not as great as Tellez or Lowe or Walker. But if you want to save, a little extra money off like Walker, then he's an option. And then I have 2 secondary options. One of them is Kirsten Hyura. If he plays, he's been really good this season, and I've liked using him from time to time. Obviously I like Rowdy Tellez better, but a lot of times Hyura, he will DH and he'll be pretty good. As you can see, he has some really plus, where he can score 30 points occasionally. But overall, he's a secondary option. The other one is Solano for Cincinnati. Now, he's not a big power guy, but he's been hitting the ball at 439 and averaging 8.6 last 10. You can't really rely on him to get a home run, but he's getting a lot of hits. And Cincinnati and Washington games, they're going to be kind of wonky this week. And, kind of high scoring just because neither one of them have very good pitching. And so, that's kind of why I'm included him here. Obviously, I like the other guys better that I mentioned, but he's an option if you need to save more money. At second base, I actually found quite a few good options. So I have 2 top tier options and a top alternate, and then a bunch of secondary options. So my first top tier player is Jorge Polanco. Where are you at? There you are. From Minnesota. He's been, not hitting the ball quite as well as we normally like, but he's still managing to score points, and so that's why I kind of like him. And he's in a top plus situation. The thing about second base is it's really hard to find a lot of home runs at the position a lot of times, so he's just somebody who's relatively safe and pretty inexpensive for what he can do. The other guy is Luis Arias. Now, he has cross potential at first base, and he's been hitting the ball pretty well this season, even though he's been in a little bit of a slump lately. The last 2 games, or one of the last games, he's got 9 points, and I look for him to get away from Houston and get back to home is going to help him get back on track. And so I do like him. He's not really a top tier option, but he's like a top alternate. And then my favorite pick, though, is Jeff McNeil for the Mets against Kyle Freeland, who's been terrible this season. He's been batting .405 the last 10. He hadn't really gotten home runs in those games, but he's averaging 8 points per game, and he has some upside just because he hits the ball so well. And so there's not a whole lot that we love at second base, but those 3 are definitely my top options. And then I have a couple more options that are secondary. One is Gleyber Torres. Let's see if I can find him here. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, averaging 7.2 points per game. He's got a plus matchup with the Yankees against a bad opponent, so we do like him in that situation. And then another guy that I haven't really mentioned on channel before, but I really do like this guy occasionally, is Jake Cronenworth for San Diego. Man, when he hits the ball well, it's always fun to roster him because he has big point potential, and he's got a really good matchup today, so I really like him in this situation. And then also Jonathan India for the Cincinnati Reds. I like a lot of guys against Washington, and he's going to be a guy who I like. He's been hitting the ball pretty well. He's averaging 8 points per game. He's not real likely to hit you a bunch of home runs and stuff, but he's got speed and stuff like that, so he has some stolen base potential as well. And then for a kind of secondary / Hail Mary pick, Von Grisham for the Braves. This dude has just been smashing the ball. I mean, I don't understand it even. He's just been, 367 over the last, he's played in 16 games, and he's just killing the ball. He's been getting on base in different ways, trying to find different ways, and then, Michael Harris will a lot of times knock him in. And he's got some speed, so he can get some steals and stuff like that as well. He's a good cut. He's kind of borderline in the Hail Mary and secondary play, but if you need salary relief at second base and you want some, home run ability, then he's the guy that you could go to. So I really like him as well. So at third base, there's not quite as much at third base and shortstop, which is, sometimes the way it is. But I did find some decent players. I mentioned Solano already. He is a secondary option again at this position. So I just want to kind of mention him as a good choice. And then my top pick is Alex Bregman. Obviously, that's a pay-up situation. But, he's averaging 13 fantasy points for the last 10. And, he's kind of booming and busting in the aspect that he can score a crap ton of points if put to the position. And he is going up against Baltimore pitching, which is definitely an advantage for him. Then I have a couple other secondary options, and Kyle Farmer for Cincinnati. Again, just like him to go up against the Washington pitcher. He's done pretty good lately. He has a little bit of potential to get some good hits and stuff like that in the plus matchup, and he's really been mashing Washington, which is what I really like. And so he's kind of a secondary option. And then another one who might feel a little bit safer for a lot of people is Josh Donaldson. He doesn't have the batting average, but he does have some power, and so he does tend to hit the ball pretty well. He's also been killing Oakland lately, and so he's a good alternate option that you could save some money with. And then the last guy, he's a Hail Mary option, and this is just if you really want to save money, is Emmanuel Rivera. Excuse me. He's been hitting the ball really well, and he's been popping up in my algorithm, and I've been kind of reluctant to use him, but he does seem to get on base and score some points. He hit a home run yesterday. He's got some of that potential. I mean, he's not the biggest home run guy, but he still hits the ball pretty well. When he does connect, then it usually seems to fly. He doesn't have the, massive potential maybe that some other guys do in this matchup, but he definitely is a cheap option that you could utilize to give yourself a chance to get 7 to 10 points probably and save you some money. So that's pretty much what I have at third base. Again, not a ton of love there. Oh, I forgot one guy, Manny Machado. Sorry about that. He's my pay-up guy, expensive option, really expensive option, but he's also in a great matchup. And he's been hitting the ball pretty well, averaging 7 points per game last 10. He's had a little bit of a slump a couple games, but I feel like that he's got a situation where he's in kind of home run mode, and so maybe he'll smash one against the Kansas City Royals. Obviously he's expensive though, so you're going to have to work him in if you really want to use him. Third base isn't particularly great today, so you got kind of a lot of kind of potential, but kind of hit and miss situations. But overall, not the worst position that we have on the day. That would actually go to shortstop. it was really hard to find a lot of value here. But I did find a couple guys that you could utilize. So my top tier option is Willie Adams for Adamas for Milwaukee. He's been averaging 10 fantasy points a game last 10, and I definitely like him in this matchup against Chicago Cubs at home. And so that's pretty much what I like there. He has home run potential in this game, and you can't go wrong with that. The other guy that is a top alternate is going to be my guy who you can save some money with is Jeremy Pena. He hasn't been quite as good as of late, but he's in a plus matchup, and he has some potential in this particular game, and so I do like him. Obviously he's a little bit cheaper, and that's why I like him more than anything. But he is a pretty safe option if you want to use him in this plus matchup. And then another kind of expensive option is Carlos Correa for Minnesota. I like some of these Minnesota players. He's not as good as Willie Adams, obviously, but he's still pretty good, and he's a good option as a secondary option. And then I have one more secondary option who's a little bit less expensive. Not the most ideal one is Mr. Kim from San Diego. He's been hitting the ball really well at 351 in the last 10 games. He really doesn't have a ton of home run potential, but he still hits the ball pretty decent. And he's really been up in his game and, scoring 8, 7, and obviously having some big games as well. And we kind of like to see that out of a player if we're going to roster him, having some potential to get some big games. And so he kind of fits that category and is a little bit cheaper than the other top two guys. So that's pretty much what I have at shortstop. Unfortunately, it's just a really rough position. Obviously, you could always, try to go safe with Dansby Swanson or Francisco Lindor. But they really just didn't have the matchup ideals that I really liked for today overall. So I just, I didn't really include them just because of that. I feel like Willie Adams is probably the best bet. At the outfield position, we have quite a few good players that I really like today, and then we have some secondary options and a Hail Mary. I'm just going to tell you the Hail Mary first. It is Mr. Jake Fraley for Cincinnati. Where are you at? There you go. He's got home run threat written all over him. He's only played 37 games this year. He has 7 home runs. He's had 4 home runs in the last 10 games, averaging 10 points per game. His batting average leaves a lot to be desired, though, which is why he's a Hail Mary pick. Yesterday, I think a lot of people really hoped he would home run against a rookie pitcher. He didn't do very good against him. He was 0 for 5 with the strikeout. But overall, he has a lot of potential, and as you can see, he can smash and have gigantic games. And so that's why he's a Hail Mary situation and a plus matchup today. But he is risky because he has not hit the ball much in the last couple games. So my favorite picks of the day are Andrew Benintendi and Christian Yelich. Both of these guys have hit the ball really well as of late, and so I definitely like those two guys. Christian Yelich is going against Smiley, and Benintendi, where are you at? Is going up against Ollier, who's literally the worst pitcher on the board today. And again, he doesn't have, big home run stuff, but he's been batting .368 last 10 games, so we definitely love that. Then my other I have a few top alternates. One of them is Riley Green. I really like what he's been doing with in the last few games, hitting a couple home runs and stuff like that. He hadn't batted in but 60 games this season, but he's starting to really get more comfortable, and he's batting .393 or 2.93 in the last 10 games. So he's one of my top options and a plus matchup for Detroit, which I mentioned at the beginning of the thing. And then Mitch Haniger is another guy I really like. Mitch Haniger. He's got home run potential. He's been hitting the ball pretty well as of late, and that's what we like. And he's got, home run potential as well as just mashing the ball. So he's definitely one of the guys I really like and want to try to fit in my lineup. Then another guy is Kyle Tucker and Mark Canal. Uh, Tucker for Houston, he's a little bit more expensive than I really want to pay, probably just because I need value at this position. But Canha, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's been hitting the ball well, and he's got a really good matchup against Colorado. He's been batting 400 for the last 10, and he's included 3 home runs in those games. And when he gets hot and going, he's a guy I like to use. So he's definitely up there as a top alternate. And then I have several secondary options. Leody Taveras Tavares. I think that's I don't know how to say his name, for Texas against Detroit. He's not a home run hitter, but he's been hitting the ball pretty well, and so I feel like he's a pretty solid option at the position, and he's a little bit cheaper. And then Andrew McCutchen for Milwaukee. I really like Milwaukee, though he has been a little bit hit and miss lately, but he's still hitting 3 home runs the last 10 games, and so he's a home run threat. And then Mr. Renfro, also from Milwaukee. He's kind of in a similar position, hasn't been hitting the ball quite as well as we would like, but he's still hitting home runs, and we like home run potential. And then the final 2 secondary options are going to be Andrew Vaughn for the Chicago White Sox, kind of again in a situation where he's got home run potential recently, but again, he's not hitting quite as good as we'd necessarily like for a normal position player. And then Trey Mancini, when this guy pops up in my algorithm, I really like it. He can be kind of flaky when it comes to hitting. He's been not hitting the ball particularly well as of late, but he still has 3 home runs in the last 10 games. And when he pops up in the lineup optimizer, I tend to like him because he tends to hit home runs in those games. And so he's the guy that I like as a secondary option. And like I said, I mentioned my Hail Mary is Jake Fraley. And so that's pretty much what I got for this set of games. I think that we're going to have some decent amount of scoring. I don't think that there's going to be an overwhelming pitcher who's going to get in the 30-point range or anything like that. I think it's not the greatest pitching matchup situation for a lot of pitchers and stuff like that. So, but again, I think we'll have a pretty good scoring day. So with that said, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. If there's any players that you think that I didn't cover that I should have, feel free to leave those below. And thanks, and have a nice day, guys.